Hello, and thank you for joining us today as we kick off the 21st Cybersecurity Awareness Month. At the National Cybersecurity Alliance, we are committed to building a more secure, interconnected world. Our mission is to advocate for the safe use of technology and to empower individuals, families, and organizations to protect themselves against cyber threats. Through strong partnerships between governments and corporations, we work to amplify this message and foster greater digital safety for everyone. Cybersecurity is not just a shared responsibility. It's a collaborative effort that spans the public and private sectors. That's why we've brought together leaders from both arenas today to share insights, initiatives, and strategies to help secure our nation's critical infrastructure and protect our digital lives. Cybersecurity Awareness Month is co-led by the NCA and CISA. CISA's campaign, Secure Our World, shares simple ways Americans can protect themselves, their families, and their businesses from online threats. The latest insight from our 2024 OBehave report show a shift in attitudes toward online safety. For example, 54% of people say it's easy to stay secure online, a promising 4% increase from last year. However, 35% of participants reported being victims of cybercrime, a reminder that our work is far from over. All month long, we'll be sharing best practices and simple steps you can take to protect yourself, your business, and your family. You can learn more at our website, StaySafeOnline.org. Now it's my pleasure to introduce the Deputy Director of CISA, Nitin Natarajan.
Thanks, Lisa. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Good morning to any colleagues on the West Coast, and thank you, Lisa, for inviting me here again today. As honored to be here to help kick off the 21st Cybersecurity Awareness Month with our partners at the National Cybersecurity Alliance. It really is a privilege to partner with NCA's board, Lisa, and her incredible team as they work throughout the year to spread the message of strong cybersecurity practices and working in communities across the nation. In CISA's brief 6-year history, our work with NCA has made serious strides in spreading the word about a growing and increasingly hostile cyber threat landscape. Our partnership has helped us collectively reduce the nation's cyber risk. And while it seems like just yesterday we were launching the new enduring theme for Cybersecurity Awareness Month, Secure Our World, it was actually, in fact, just a year ago, last week, that we launched Secure Our World with Lisa and several of you in attendance at the launch. And we're really excited about the traction that we're seeing. But this year, it's about taking that awareness and creating action. With the 21st Cybersecurity Awareness Month now underway, we would expect that we would see big improvements in preparedness against cyber threats. We are much better off than where we were 2 decades ago due to the great work by our public and private sector partners around the world and across the nation. But emerging technologies constantly change the landscape, so we still have a long way to go to raise cyber hygiene to where we all want it, which is why Cybersecurity Awareness Month is so important in jumpstarting those conversations. When Cybersecurity Awareness Month started in 2004, the President and Congress looked at it as an opportunity to amplify the growing threat of online cyber attacks and promote a team approach to tackling cybersecurity on a national and global scale. Every year since, October is booked with cyber awareness events, collaborative trainings and outreach, and fresh opportunities to help tell our story to an international audience. It's time to build off that and to be a catalyst for action. As many of you know, CISA is relatively new to the story. Created in 2018, November will mark our 6th anniversary. And while we're one of the younger federal agencies, we've worked hard to solidify our role as the nation's civilian cyber defense agency. I'm proud to say CISA has worked hard on contributing to a national cyber policy that has changed the cyber landscape. We also work to provide resources to help the public, businesses, state, local, tribal, and territorial governments, other federal agencies, and partners across all the 16 critical infrastructure sectors and the public to better prepare for and take action to reduce their risk from potential cyber threats. We've especially focused on target-rich, resource-poor stakeholders who need the kind of support CISA is offering so they too can take the action needed to address their vulnerabilities. Our message has always been simple. Take care of the fundamentals. Basic cyber hygiene is key, like creating strong passwords, updating your software, using multi-factor authentication, and watching out for scams and phishing attempts. The one thing I will always guarantee you is nobody is going to send you $1 million via email. So simple steps such as these can really help make a difference. In addition, we've encouraged technology partners to take ownership at the executive level to ensure their products are secure by design, so that the burden of ensuring the safety of our devices does not continue to be placed disproportionately on the shoulders of consumers and small businesses. Teamwork and collaboration are critical, as there is no single public sector solution or private sector solution to this. It truly is a national solution. Sharing information and expertise between the public and private sectors, between cyber experts and digital novices, and between consumers, designers, and manufacturers benefit all of our efforts. In short, it's why we're all part of the solution for Secure Our World, and it's a message that we're glad is gaining traction. And the timing of this year's Cybersecurity Awareness Month could not be more consequential. Anyone who works within or anywhere near the world of digital technology and cybersecurity knows that we're living in perilous times. In our hyper-connected world, we're watching the pace and scope of technology advance at warp speed in real time. China, Russia, and Iran are growing their capabilities and intent to sow chaos into our institutions through cyber warfare, damaging America's ability to project strength, security, and continuity to an unstable world. China is perfecting living off the land techniques to pre-position on our critical infrastructure, with plans to disrupt key services at strategic times of their choosing. We're fighting a multi-front war against sophisticated, well-funded enemies. The good news is CISA has and continues to build strong relations with the critical infrastructure owners and operators, with the operations and digital communities, and sharing intel and closely collaborating on gaps and vulnerabilities in this chess match with malicious nation states and cyber criminals. Predictable threats stand at the doorstep of next month's general election. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence confirms that a diverse and agile group of foreign actors are trying to influence our elections this November. Again, CISA is positioned to support 2024 election officials in communities across the nation and private sector election infrastructure partners against a potential blitz of physical, cyber, and operational security risks. CISA's Protect 2024 election security initiative includes critical tasks to be fulfilled in our role as the federal lead overseeing election secure infrastructure security. CISA will be working up to Election Day and beyond in support of our state and local government officials to ensure the integrity of our elections. Of course, we can't talk about cybersecurity without talking about AI, a technology with equal parts promise and existential risk. Quick hit AI algorithms have potential to accelerate the speed, scale, and sophistication of cyber attacks to levels we're only starting to understand. The challenge is real, but we're balancing it with really looking at how we can innovate and understand AI so that it can be a tool in our cyber defense mission. We're always looking at AI in multiple ways. This includes how to use AI tools to better address cybersecurity and risk reduction, how to partner with our stakeholders to ensure that AI systems perform in a trustworthy way, looking at safety, security, resiliency, and reliability, and developing guidance and best practices for holistic security testing of AI systems. Additionally, we're working to anticipate and identify how malicious actors plan to use AI to their benefit. To this end, we recently released an AI safety and security guidance to help critical infrastructure operators tap into the transformative potential of AI while minimizing risk. All of these efforts lead us to this defining theme of this year as we look at securing our world. CISA's cybersecurity awareness programs remind us that we can all take simple steps each day to reduce our risk online. Secure Our World stresses shared action for cybersecurity and has been a great message for raising awareness of the threat environment and what steps to take to be safe. With all of our collaboration and this important message, awareness to action for Cybersecurity Awareness Month made sense as a logical next step in our cyber awareness evolution, because we all have actionable steps that we can take to stay safe and secure online. As I always say, when it comes to cybersecurity, we all have a role to play and we need everybody to play their role. The Secure by Design initiative is a perfect example, as we encourage this shift of security burdens away from end users by asking vendors to design inherently secure products. We launched a campaign earlier this year with a pledge campaign with industry, resulting in 68 software companies signing on to that pledge. And we're already at over 200 companies that have signed on to meeting a number of demonstrable, measurable progress areas within the first year. In analog to this pledge, we recently released our Secure by Demand Guide for customers of software. It's a short, concise guide that lists items that customers should be asking in their procurement discussions and a set of questions for detailing each of these priorities. And thus, this is the start. CISA and NCA colleagues are addressing cybersecurity across a wide front. CISA also has a number of grant programs that we've launched. The fiscal year 24 state and local cybersecurity grant program notice of funding opportunity was released just last week, providing $280 million to fund cybersecurity measures across state, local, and territorial governments. And earlier this year, we awarded over $18 million in a tribal cybersecurity grant program under the tribal component of that program. We're seeing these investments making a difference in communities across the nation, and are excited to see what the future holds. Additionally, we're heavily focused on workforce development to help address the severe shortage of cyber personnel and information security workers across all industries. We know that this shortage undercuts a lot of our best efforts to defend against malicious cyber attacks. And we know it's no secret that the best line of defense is developing that highly trained cybersecurity workforce across the sectors. We have a number of programs underway, including our Cybersecurity Workforce Development and Training for Underserved Communities program that works with nonprofits, focusing on individuals with an aptitude for cyber, but often without a traditional educational background. We also encourage students to look at the Cyber Core Scholarship for Service program, which looks at cyber-focused bachelor's, master's, and graduate degrees, that upon graduation, students are guaranteed positions in federal, state, and local and tribal governments. We also have awarded millions to nonprofits to look at creating programs in underserved communities, including our partners at Empower, Cyber Warrior, Scholars, and the South Memphis Renewal Community Development Corporation. We also work closely with our colleagues at the Office of the National Cyber Director, who you'll hear from, to implement the National Cyber Workforce Education Strategies. And we're committed to continuing to grow that pool because we know that there's a role in cybersecurity for everybody. So in closing, as you can see, Cybersecurity Awareness Month is a great platform to share CISA's wide-ranging resources and expertise, but frankly, that of all of our partners as well. And collectively, we are helping prevent attacks, minimize impacts, and increasing resiliency across the nation, and preparing our stakeholders for inevitable cyber events, but ones that we can bounce back from quicker. Each of you play a vital role in these programs and in the positive impact that we're making. On this kickoff to Cybersecurity Awareness Month 2024, we redouble our efforts and call upon each of you, our teams across the federal government, our partners in the private sector, in state, local, tribal, territorial governments, and our global partners to share, strengthen, grow, and multiply the heart of collaboration and awareness that is yielding tangible results. You are helping spread the message and build this new culture of personal cyber hygiene and corporate accountability. I thank each of you for helping CISA promote the message, both this month and beyond. And I thank our partners across business and industry who support a secure by design and secure by demand ethos in digital manufacturing. Our success truly lies in our continued ability to raise awareness, foster collaboration, and provide effective tools and resources to empower everybody in this battle for a safer digital world. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here with you today, and have a great Cybersecurity Awareness Month.
Thank you very much, Nitin. Thank you for joining us today. Now I'd like to welcome Deputy National Cyber Director, Harry Wingo.
Thank you, Lisa. Thanks for the kind welcome, and I'd like to thank the National Cybersecurity Alliance for hosting such a meaningful event. October is always an exciting time for those of us in cybersecurity. As we come together for this year's National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, it's a perfect time to emphasize the many ways Americans can keep themselves safe online, especially as we see more and more Americans realize the critical impact digital systems have on our way of life. Let me start by acknowledging the great work that my colleagues at CISA are doing in providing cybersecurity resources as part of the Secure Our World campaign that Nitin mentioned that recognizes National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. I'd also like to underscore that we want people to be aware of opportunities in cyber. On National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, we've heard advice, and it's so important, that applies to all of us. Have complex passwords, ideally use a password keeper to remember the tough passwords for you, enable multi-factor authentication on all your sensitive accounts, update your software diligently, and think before you click to avoid phishing scams. And while we do need to incorporate these best practices, of course, there has been an unbalanced amount of the responsibility for cybersecurity that has fell on everyday Americans. Responsibility has fallen on small businesses, on hospitals, on those that own and operate the many and varied systems that power our increasingly digital world. Here at the White House Office of the National Cyber Director, we're proud to lead the implementation of President Biden's National Cybersecurity Strategy. In this bold document, we focus on rebalancing the responsibility of cybersecurity away from individuals, small businesses, houses of worship, etc., and rebalancing it onto those most capable. That means the federal government is taking on more responsibility, as are, and as should, large technology companies, who must do even more to build their software with security in mind, to adopt security by design on a whole nother level. Here at ONCD, we take on the hard problems. We are rebalancing the fight to ensure that you're someone's favorite small business, or that a K-12 school in your neighborhood are not going toe-to-toe with sophisticated cyber criminals, or even against countries who are bad actors in cyberspace. This is a task of rebalancing that we're proud to take on. We are also proud to take on making sure the incentives are there to invest in those types of long-term infrastructure changes that will make all of us safer. Today, I'd also like to encourage all of the employers in the room, the virtual room, to ask yourself some questions. Are there local community colleges, technical colleges, or universities with internship and apprenticeship programs that can train alongside you or with you? When you look at your hiring practices, do you have 4-year degree requirements that may not be necessary in your job descriptions? In other words, are you focusing on skills-based hiring for cyber jobs? Such skills-based hiring are so important for building the workforce that we need to protect the nation. So this month, and always, please keep yourselves and your loved ones safe online. But please know that here at the White House, we're working with each of you, with our stakeholders, to change the game this Cybersecurity Month to make us all safer. Spread the awareness of cybersecurity and let folks know that they can join the cybersecurity workforce, that they can join the opportunities to work in cybersecurity. Recently, the Office of the National Cyber Director, alongside our partners at OMB and OPM, launched the Service for America campaign. Service for America is a recruiting, hiring, and engagement campaign aimed at getting the word out and encouraging more Americans to join us in good-paying, meaningful jobs in cyber, technology, and artificial intelligence. Whether folks join us in the federal government, or whether they join in state or local government, or work for one of the many institutions that provide critical services to communities across the nation, we need more Americans to join us in the work to prepare our country for a digitally enabled future. Today, there are approximately 500,000 open jobs in cyber, 500,000. And I've heard this reiterated everywhere I go. I hear from folks who own small businesses and people who run school districts, and even many senior leaders in government, that unfortunately, we're just not keeping up with finding the people we need to fill cyber positions. So this is a great opportunity this month to, yes, encourage awareness of cybersecurity, but underscore that there is an awareness of opportunity in cyber for jobs, meaningful jobs. At ONCD, we're taking on the hard problems, and we're taking several approaches to fill the gap in those who are in cyber roles. First, we're encouraging more folks to join the cybersecurity workforce by expanding pathways into the profession, helping people understand that they can have access to good-paying, meaningful jobs where they can make a difference in their own communities. We want Americans from every background and discipline to see themselves joining the cyber workforce. You don't have to have a computer science degree to serve in a cyber role. Many Americans still haven't considered a job in cyber, AI, or tech. And while cyber professionals are part of a dynamic and modern workforce, we also have to get after that stereotype that it's only for those folks who are kind of like a hacker in the basement. That stereotype is outdated because we have so many more folks who can join and see themselves in cyber. Second, we're encouraging every employer to adopt skills-based hiring for information technology jobs. In fact, many cyber professionals today are self-taught. We need to evolve our practices to meet the workforce where they are and take advantage of untapped talent. And again, underscoring skills-based hiring wherever that's possible. Thankfully, the federal government is moving the lead by example. In April of this year, thanks to great work by our partners at the Office of Personnel Management, we were able to announce that we will move an entire series of technical jobs to fully skills-based hiring within the government. Specifically, we are transitioning the Information Technology Management Series, called the 2210 Series, to skills-based hiring principles and practices. The 2210 job series represents IT workers in every federal agency. They are the majority of the federal IT workforce, accounting for nearly 100,000 current federal employees. This change will take effect next summer. Importantly, we have also made a similar commitment to ensure degree requirements do not present a barrier for federal contractors who work shoulder to shoulder supporting federal employees every day. The Department of Energy has already begun to work to pivot towards skills-based hiring in IT and cyber contracts, as an example. But we'll never get to where we need to be without the help of our partners. Since the launch of the National Cyber Workforce and Education Strategy last year, we've relied on commitments from the public and from the private sector to grow the cyber workforce that America needs. To date, we've collected more than 100 pledges from organizations across the country. We are always looking to elevate solutions that model best practices and highlight exceptional opportunities to support good-paying cyber careers for all Americans. That includes training, funding for apprenticeships, paid internships, and other earn and learn programs, and changes in hiring practices that support skills-based hiring. We want Americans to understand that the Biden-Harris administration, federal agencies, our private sector partners, that we are all invested in making sure there are multiple pathways and opportunities available for anyone who wants to begin their cyber career. If you visit our website at whitehouse.gov/Service for America, you can find many career resources that are available to any American who's interested in learning how to access these good-paying, meaningful cyber careers. So to those of you who are encouraged and energized by Cybersecurity Awareness Month, I encourage you to join us. Make no mistake, a career in cybersecurity helps protect our nation. It contributes to our economic prosperity, but also our national security. And it also helps to ensure that America remains the greatest innovator of technology in the history of the world. So again, I'd like to thank each of you for what you're doing in this month, and like to give a special thanks to the National Cybersecurity Alliance. It's great to be here on behalf of the White House. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barry. Now I'd like to welcome Bob Lord, Senior Technical Advisor for CISA, to join us for a fireside chat.
Hello, everybody. Is this the fire?
Yep, you're on, you're live. Thanks for being here today, Bob.
My pleasure.
We have a panel coming up shortly about secure by design with some industry partners, but let's set the stage for that now. What does secure by design actually mean?
Yeah, so maybe the best way to think about it from the high level is that secure by design software is software where the security is baked in, not bolted on. And it's the realization that we don't really have a cybersecurity problem, we have a software quality problem. And I think you probably know a little bit more about this than I do, and I'm not a car guy, but let me just talk about something that we used to do back in the day. So like in the 1950s and early 1960s, companies would produce cars and consumers would buy them. And in some cases, they were not quite safe by design. And so you'd have to know that this was the case, and you'd have to go buy something called a camber compensator. Camber compensator is this literal bar that you would put, you literally bolt it on underneath your car. And the idea was to help it not flip over when you were turning the corner or in gusty winds. And that was something that was acceptable back then. but it is something that we no longer accept. And so what we have today are things in cars where the safety mechanisms are literally built in. And so we have crumple zones so that the car itself absorbs the energy of a collision. We have collapsible steering columns so that in a front end collision, the steering wheel doesn't come up to break your ribs. And those things have to be built in as requirements even before the designs start. And that's what we're looking to see with the world of software. And one of the things people often say is like, well, I mean, the software can never be perfect, and the bad guys are always trying to do new things. But when you really take a look at it, the vulnerabilities that we see are not unpredictable random acts of nature. They're very rarely the work of these sophisticated threat actors that we hear about. They're sure they make the headlines, and sure those are very, very bad. But what's really happening is that we see the same classes of coding error over and over and over again. There's a white paper that folks might be interested in. It'll be easy to find on your favorite search engine, but it's called Unforgivable Vulnerabilities, and it's from 2007. And this is written by an organization called MITRE, and they're not prone to hyperbole. They're a fact-based organization. So when they wrote a paper that said, these are the classes of coding error that are unforgivable, like we should really take note. So I found this paper, and I also compared it to the 2023 list of common vulnerabilities. Is anybody on this call really going to be surprised to find out that the same classes of coding error that we saw in 2007 are in fact the same ones from 2023? They're almost exactly the same. And so what that does is it tells us that there's something going on where we need to start taking a look at software quality and not try to constantly rely on the defenders to stay cyber safe. So one of the things that we sometimes say is that before the software companies can make safer software, we all have to agree that software can be dramatically safer than it is today.
Yeah, and I can highly recommend Bob's recorded presentation. I think was it Black Hat last year on if you want to dive a little deeper into the automotive safety and software analogy. I can highly recommend that presentation. As a kid from Detroit, I not knowing that Bob did that presentation, I did something similar based on a lot of my personal experience in the industry. And that's recorded as well. That was last year's OWASP presentation. So many parallels to look at through history, and we're driving software that's unsafe at any speed. Yeah.
Right.
So this has been a major focus for CISA. Now over 200 companies have signed the Secure by Design pledge. What's in the pledge exactly? What is it that you're asking companies to do?
Yeah, so exactly right. So if you think about when we released the Secure by Design white paper a year ago, we spent that year really trying to raise the conversation. So it turns out many people for literally decades have been asking for safety to be built into various software products. And what we really wanted to do is resurrect those conversations. And I think we succeeded. So it is definitely a topic of conversation. Basically, everywhere we go, we see companies posting blog posts about how they're taking the challenge to drive improved security into their products. So first year was really about setting the stage, creating a topic of conversation. This is the year, though, that we really want to start turning those ideas into action. And one of the ways that we're doing that is wrapped up in the pledge. So the pledge is this voluntary pledge with a series of goals that are really fairly straightforward in a sense, but may not be necessarily completely trivial for all companies to adhere to. So it's going to take some of them a little bit of time. And I'd also like to say, like, it's not just us asking them to do these things. What we're trying to do is bring people together, bring these companies together to find the common ground, to understand how the hacks happen in the real world, and to share best practices for how they can improve the engineering of their products so that they are more resilient against these kinds of attacks. So it's definitely a communal effort. And we also want the companies that have signed the pledge to inspire the others who have not yet signed the pledge. I think a lot of what we need to do is move from a world where people say, oh, again, Bob, software can never be perfectly secure. move them to a point where they say, aha, well, there's a particular piece of a technique or a technology that we can use to eliminate classes of vulnerability. And those are the kinds of things that I think we can do as a larger community. So what's in the pledge? Things like no default passwords. You shouldn't have to say that in 2024, and yet some environments, some products still have those kinds of mechanisms. And so we're working to help the companies think through that. MFA, making sure that the companies improve the adoption of MFA among their customers. Reporting their vulnerabilities and having a vulnerability disclosure plan is part of this. And really, my favorite has to do with eliminating entire classes of defect. So again, the problems that you see that force you all to update your devices, your routers, your all those different systems that you're forced to update on a regular basis, none of those are shocking head slappers. Those are almost all existing, well understood classes of coding error for which we've had effective and cheap mitigations for not just years, but decades. And so we really want to draw attention to that so that the industry can really heal, not by playing whack-a-mole, but by getting rid of the whole enchilada one after the other.
But what would you say to the CEO that doesn't want to prioritize security? You have developers who want to write more secure code. You have application security professionals that are, of course, on board. What do you say to the CEO that doesn't want to make it a priority?
Yeah, so I want to go back to the Secure by Design white paper. So one of the things that we had, one of the challenges that we faced is it's really hard to say what makes for really great secure software. And you can describe some of the things that are difficult. You can say, don't do that, but really coming up with a formula that says, this is how you build it. And to do that in a way that's weatherproof, that's going to be, that's going to last over years, that's very hard. So we came up with 3 principles that we saw needing attention in the industry. One is that we want the software companies to take ownership of the customer security outcomes. So that means not just saying, hey, we had a feature here, you should have turned it on. Sorry, you didn't understand what it was or whatever, but it's your fault. We don't want them to do that. We want them to take ownership of the actual outcomes from their products being used by the customers. The second one is that we want them to engage in radical transparency. One of the dirty little secrets is we don't exactly know what good looks like in terms of building software. We have some good frameworks, but it turns out that there's a lot more to it than that. So the more that these companies can really talk about it publicly and share their successes, which goes back to the pledge, the more everybody can learn, and it raises all boats. The third one is the one that's responsive to this particular question, which is lead from the top. And what we see when we take a look at the world of quality in other industries is that people who've studied this for a long time will report that the quality doesn't change dramatically unless the effort is personally led by a business executive. So not just delegating quality or safety to the quality teams or the safety teams, but having a business leader lead from the top. And so that's where we're going to start to see the change. Now, there is this sort of cold reality that economics underlies everything. And so incentives are what they are today. And one of the factors is customers don't know how to ask for good, secure products. And we don't want them asking for things like military-grade encryption, which is a phrase you'll hear all the time. It's a meaningless phrase, and that's not actually how the hacks happen. So how do we start to do that? One way is to get customers to start to ask for it. And if they start to ask for things like the elements in the pledge, now we're starting to get some demand signals. So what I would say to those CEOs is the landscape is changing. It will be challenging and time consuming for you to start to really build the next generation of your products such that they're secure by design. But I think the tide is changing, and the good news is you have more tools and practices that we just didn't have 5-10 years ago. So if you looked at it a bunch of years ago, many things have improved. And I think maybe one of the final things I'll say is that it's kind of cheaper. It should be somewhat cheaper if you start to build security in from the beginning. And that's not just true for the customers who don't necessarily have to go out and buy all sorts of patching tools and sophisticated threat analysis systems, but If you think about it, in physical manufacturing, they're very good at measuring the cost per class of defect and trying to just destroy that, to really squash that down to zero. That's not a practice that we see in the world of software, where companies will be they'll be made aware of a particular vulnerability, and then they will go and fix the one. So they'll play whack-a-mole. It's going to be in the long term cheaper to invest in the technologies and the practices that will eliminate entire classes of defect. So we hypothesize that there'll be some elements that are actually going to be cheaper if they do this right. I mean, your airbag does cost something. It's not free. Collapsible steering columns cost something. They're not free. But if you can really get early into the development life cycle, we think that companies are going to find lots of opportunities to save money.
Couldn't agree more. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about Cybersecurity Awareness Month. It's all about educating the public, and sometimes there's some bad or outdated advice that floats around out there. How do you recommend the public keep themselves safe online?
Yeah. So I have this term that I use. Nobody else has picked it up, but that's okay. I'll just keep using it. It's called hack lore. So it's like hacking urban legends, folklore, that sort of thing. And there are these things that most of us have believed at one point, and many people still do, that are bits of advice about what to do or not to do. And these really belong in an ancient history museum, because if they were ever true, they're largely not true today. And so what we have to do is we have to recalculate our threat models and understand that the technologies have changed, in some cases for the better. And so the things that I would really point people to are ones that we've already had other speakers tease, which is that Secure Our World program that CISA has. And it has 3 specific things that individuals can do, and 1 general awareness thing. So obviously general awareness, you have to be aware that people are going to try to scam you. And so you have to remain vigilant. But the other 3 things that are really important are to use strong passwords. And our Secure Our World webpage has descriptions of what that is. Of course, we want you to use password managers, because to have strong passwords, I can't remember all my passwords. I have hundreds of them. So password manager is really key. Turning on MFA, especially phishing resistant MFA if you can, and updating your software. So these are the things that are going to be responsive to how the attacks really work. And so I just keep coming back to these. The basics are always the basics, and these have been the basics for a long time. So I would encourage people not to get overly wound up about whatever is flying around in the internet, or in some cases, like what you hear on podcasts, you'll hear, advertisers promising to save your digital lives, but that's not how the hacks happen. So the Secure Our World program is really the thing I would point people to.
Yeah, and in that program, we tried to lean into positivity and not
Right.
pictures of hackers and hoodies and scary terminology, because we don't find that's a really good motivator. So along those lines, a lot of what's out there is a lot of doom and gloom, a militaristic language and scary imagery. So let's end on a positive note. What have you seen in cybersecurity over the past 10 years that you would call a win? What progress have we made?
So I'm so glad you asked this, because I don't, I'm the guy who tells everybody this is how the hacks work and this is how they're going to get you, and the software needs to be safer. And so I don't want to be the doom and gloom guy, and we should celebrate the wins. So although it's going to take a long time before the products that we really rely on every hour of every day are truly secure by design, we should celebrate the wins, and we should celebrate the fact that we can do hard things and that we can eliminate classes of vulnerability. So one of the things that I would mention is the popularization of memory-safe programming languages. So it turns out that if you're writing in C and C++, you're going to have memory safety vulnerabilities, and these are some of the most dangerous classes of vulnerabilities. Moving to a memory-safe programming language, which many companies have been, eliminates that entire class of defects, so they don't have to play whack-a-mole with that. One of my favorite things that's happened over the last 5-10 years is the rise of security for your web traffic. And so the operating systems are safer, and the browsers are much safer, and there's better sandboxing in the browsers and site isolation. And basically almost all sites that you go to these days are going to be protected with HTTPS. And so one of the things that I try to talk people out of is this fear of checking your mail or doing a shopping exercise in a cafe. That's not how the hacks happen. In 2011, we had some real problems with that. 2010, that hasn't been a problem for years. And so we should celebrate the fact that your web traffic is so much more secure than it ever has been, such that the bad guys are going to use a completely different technique. Phishing resistant MFA, my favorite is it's because when I am tricked into doing what the bad guys say, and we're all going to be tricked at some point, we're all going to fall for the ruse. I still can't give the attacker what they need in order to take over my account. It's just an astonishing a technical accomplishment. It's built into the browsers you already use and the websites you already use and things like that. So lots of reasons to be optimistic, a long way to go, but I think we should take this time not to be fearful, but to be thankful.
That's great, Bob. Thank you very much. Thank you for being with us today, and have a good rest of your Cybersecurity Awareness Month.
Thank you, you too.
So I now invite Charlie, Mark, Joanna, and Mike to join us and turn on their cameras. Right now, we will tackle one of the most important questions facing both the tech industry and government. How can we make security the default rather than the afterthought? Our next panel will explore how manufacturers and developers can lead the charge in making security a priority. From creating more secure products to fostering a culture that emphasizes secure by design, we'll dive into what's being done and what still needs to happen. I'm thrilled to introduce our expert panelists and hear their insights on how we can create a safer, more secure digital world. I want to welcome Charlie Schneider with Google, Mark Ray with PwC, Joanna Heisman from KnowBe4, and Mike Petronacci from CrowdStrike. Mike, I hope I got your last name right. I didn't butcher that too bad. A woman named Plagemeyer.
Nailed it.
I can't complain about pronouncing last names. But let's start with you, Mike. So before we talk about potential solutions here, let's talk about the problem at hand. Manufacturers need to prioritize security when developing products, just like Bob talked about. Is security still taking a back seat when new products are being developed? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing we have to understand is really, why this is hard. And so I lead the innovation side at a security company. So, I really get to kind of, we don't have any, lack of priority, but it's still a real challenge. So everybody knows the modern world runs on software, but why is it difficult to implement? And why are we now compelled to do something? So let's start with why now. As Bob just mentioned, enterprises, federal, state, and local government organizations are on the front lines of global warfare today, right? Using technology, puts you in the line of fire, but you're also on the front lines of a scaled criminal activity that we've never seen before. It's much easier to become a criminal, and it's much more profitable to do it from the comfort of your home. But on top of that, a new class of applications built on AI are exploding, and that creates a new risk. And so we're looking at we're building these AI applications, but so are unfriendly nations and criminals. And so the good news about this, new class of applications, this rapid innovation, it will cause replacement, and there will be winners and losers in the market. And so it's an opportunity for us to do better using, capitalism to do better as a community than the last generation of applications. And so that's really why now, right? Like it's an opportunity through your buying power, through your using what you use, making a vote and deciding what is safe to use. And the second thing is, why is this actually really hard? And so I'm an engineer by training, and so I can tell you that security is more than just quality, right? It's more fundamental. Engineers are taught how to build stuff, and fundamentally, you have to think about how it may be broken, right? It takes a totally different point of view to understand how your product could be misused, what the side effects may be. And if you need an example, like, recall, cars again, but the first cars were developed without seatbelts. It took 80 years to invent the 3-point seatbelt. In hindsight, that's an obvious safety measure, saving countless lives. And now every car has new seatbelts. So, the buying behavior and regulation eventually caught up. But the rate of innovation in software is so fast that it's often hard to predict what could go wrong with every new line of code that you write. You compound that with the fact that slowing down to do that analysis sometimes is at odds with business priorities. And so even if your team has that keen awareness and they're highly trained, they may not always be empowered to act on that because it's hard to quantify the risks of what could go wrong. It's pretty clear that you can quantify the cost of not shipping your product, right? And so from my vantage point, I really see these security gaps. And so I don't think security is in the backseat. I think it really is just going to be, it takes us all to understand what power we have over this situation, because these gaps actually become a major force that could slow global adoption of those next generation of innovations like AI, self-driving, and things like that. If people don't view them as safe, I don't think that they'll use them and are safe or secure, right? And so I think, you know, we're really grateful for the Secure by Design pledge to raise awareness around some of the most unforgivable risks and to help guide the conversation during procurement of software. So that's
Anybody else
where
want to chime in on that one? Nope. Okay, we will go to our next question. Let everybody keep getting warmed up here. So Mark, I'm going to turn to you with this one. In 2023, CISA, the NSA, and the FBI, along with other global partners, issued an updated cybersecurity information sheet providing guidance for companies to help ensure their technologies are secure by design. One of the principles in this guidance emphasizes the need for accountability from companies, as Bob mentioned. How can companies work to be transparent and take accountability when it comes to security vulnerabilities?
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. I think it's going to come down to really two things that drive transparency for companies when it comes to security in the future. I think that's kind of the climate of collaboration. I'll talk a little more about that in a second. And then the kind of the landscape of standards and regulation in the industry. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. To me, the core of this is really, the constant need in the cybersecurity community, both at, the hygiene level, the things we do on our networks day to day, but also at the product level here, the need for greater collaboration at the public, between public and private entities. So, thank you, and NCA and CISA for what you guys do, because I think that is the core of it. I think most people on this call probably understand that, but the general public, the general companies out there, I can tell you, coming from, obviously the commercial side of the house here, it's not there. And having been on the government side of the house as well, there's still a huge gap that needs to be closed. So that is one of the keys to it, I think. We've gotten pretty good at that, I think, in the last couple of years from an intel perspective, sharing of IOCs, sharing of threats, common vulnerabilities, especially when within industries like the ISACs that are out there. But we need to take it to the next level when we're talking about security by design into software products. From a commercial perspective, I can tell you companies still feel like they're getting hit over the head with a sledgehammer by certain government agencies, certain three-letter agencies. And I was one of those three-letter agencies you mentioned, but I think there's others out there that are, getting into the game. And I think we're looking at it the wrong way, looking at it from like, what are companies doing wrong as opposed to how do we help them? So hopefully these two worlds will come together at some point, and that is what will make companies be more transparent. Since we had a great stream of analogies here from Bob previously and Mike, I've got one for this as well that I think really fits well. Back in the late 1800s, when electricity was getting put into homes across the country, it was a great thing, but also people were burning down their houses pretty quickly. So it was not the government, but it was more a self-regulated industry that came up with Underwriter Laboratories, right? The UL, and that little stamp that became on every electrical device. So I don't know. I'm hopeful that something similar will emerge here. That it'll be self-regulating within the private sector, because look, it's the businesses. All the regulation in the world, all the pledges, right, which I think are great. All the standards are great, but it's not until it really hits, companies in the pocketbook where maybe they'll really start making a change. So I'm hoping that it becomes a competitive advantage to have security built into the products, and it becomes kind of the industry standard.
Yeah, I think we'd love to see that. Any other thoughts on that? Charlie, can you give us some examples of successful implementations of secure by design principles?
Yeah, sure. And I know in your previous talk with Bob, he listed some great examples of this as well. I think rather than give like a bunch of isolated examples, I would just, say a few words about how we think about secure by design at Google and how we kind of structure our program. And for us, it actually you can actually think of it as starting with actually a separate concept, which is closely related, which is secure by default. And that's another important imperative for companies that Bob Lord and CISA have spent a lot of time creating support for. And that's the concept that a product should be secure out of the box against most common threats and not require the user to have to take a bunch of actions, understand kind of complex configurations in order to use a product securely. And that's an important concept for software for end users, for consumers. But it's actually, we take that concept and apply it to our developers. Developers are users too. And for us, the path to secure by design starts with making a secure by default developer environment, because developers are users. They make errors just like users do. We've all, been either tricked or close to tricked into, clicking the malicious link in the email. People make mistakes, particularly when you talk about something as complex as software engineering, with ever more complex code bases and systems. It's really easy to make mistakes and introduce errors and flaws into code that then lead to weaknesses in the product that can be exploited by bad actors. So our approach kind of starts with developing that environment, the tools that developers use, to really provide them with a set of opinionated tools and systems they can interact with that keep them safe. Rather than giving them complete choice over every single technology they may want to use, we say use these secure libraries and frameworks to build your application. And we've had really great success with that in eliminating entire classes of bugs over the years. I think when you look at very common weaknesses and vulnerabilities like SQL injection vulnerabilities, cross-site scripting, we've eliminated those from our code base or driven them at least down to very close to zero over years and years and across a very broad and diverse set of online services. So we really believe very strongly in that as kind of the starting point. You don't want to just leave developers to the wolves to kind of try to figure it out themselves. Helping them by structuring an environment that's going to lead to safe and secure outputs is really how you start down this path. And I think we've been very pleased with the results of that over the years.
Anybody want to add to
Yeah.
that?
I just want to say I love the approach Google's taking. We take a similar approach as well, and it's a win-win for the developer efficiency and productivity. So once there's some upfront ramp there, but I think that lack of picking anything in the open world, it constrains their choices and actually helps them move faster. So it is a win-win, once it's running at scale, especially somewhere like Google. So.
Yeah, I would say to the CEOs that are out there, if your developers are just grabbing anything open source, like Mike says, like it does take time to ramp up, like you mentioned, but I have to believe the efficiency gains are significant and the security gains are, I'm sure, obvious at that point. Anybody else want to chime in? Any other successful implementations of secure by design principles? If not, we'll move on to Joanna. Joanna, you focus a lot on end user behavior in your role at KnowBe4. How does security, behavior, and awareness fit into secure by design concepts? Would having secure by design products and systems mean we don't need training and awareness anymore? We don't need educational campaigns anymore? What do you think?
Yeah, let's talk about the people, right? So what
Yes,
if everyone came?
Developers are people too. We're talking about developers.
All people. I'm not discriminating here, right? So listen, what if you hired people who just knew what to do, right? And knew what to do every time, right? And so mistakes weren't being made there because that kind of human error component is, listen, it's probably the easiest way in, right? And cyber criminals are looking for three things: people who don't have the knowledge, people who are distracted, and people who are lazy, right? So when we talk about secure by design, this thinking around, kind of adjusting that behavioral and awareness component, I mean, it's crucial, right? And so think about it this way. I mean, driving an awareness mind frame, it just kind of adds that other layer towards an organization's defenses, right? It ensures that all stakeholders, no matter where you are, no matter what role you play, from the moment that you walk in the door, they'll understand what their role is relative to behaving differently and more secure, or behaving more responsibly, and what their responsibilities are, right? What are they associated to? And that's not only for their professional environment, that's for their personal one too, right? And so they have to understand these inherent risks. But the challenge that I see companies making, and this isn't new, right? So this goes back to my Gartner days and, days, Lisa, where you and I worked together back when, right? And it's that, they're making the mistakes that we're not training frequently enough, right? And so quarterly training is good enough, or compliance training is the same as security awareness training. Or if I train them, I don't need to test them. I don't need to give them opportunities to improve their instincts, to improve their kind of overall, understanding to what needs to be reported based on what they detected, and, all of that kind of stuff. So, they consider it a one-time thing. And we know that, listen, I love Security Awareness Month. I am a big fan of the month October, right? However, it's 1 month, right? So this is something that needs to be committed to, right? 12 months out of the year. And it is a different kind of thinking, because it's driving a more security ready culture too, right? So it's not just training, it's not just testing. You can train and test people, but as well as I do that there's this, group within your organization, like just a natural bell curve, that no matter how much training and testing you give them, they're always going to do the wrong thing, right? And it's so how do we continuously provide kind of, awareness that's front of mind, wherever they go, whatever, online water cooler they go collect themselves at, whatever, month it is, whatever initiative they're driving, right? So that those kind of human and technological elements, they need to work together, right? And especially as new threats emerge, how are we supposed to ensure that their readiness level is higher on these newer threats? So yeah, I mean, the people are an important piece of this.
Yeah, I think it's not about not needing education anymore. I talked to a small business lately who was just starting their security journey, and they looked at the sort of best advice for different parts of the business and decided that each individual function was going to implement the thing that made the most sense for that function to implement, rather than having the security team being the one trying to secure the organization. So it's almost, if you're going to embed it in the culture and you're going to embed it in people's jobs, if you're going to make it easy for developers to write more secure code and produce more secure products, then it's in the short term, for sure, it's definitely more training, not less, I think, to embed it in people's normal roles, their everyday functions.
And that's why AI is going to play such a huge role in our world, because it's going to allow us to, curate personalized training content to match where a user is and their learning preferences and their weaknesses and whatever their risk score is, right? And so it's not, training the masses to train the masses, it's training the gaps within a human that need to be bridged, right? So that's, yeah.
Well, you said the term, you said AI. So we're gonna turn to that. You can't get through any webinar these days without the mention of AI. So Mike, I'm gonna go back to you. Over the past few years, AI has taken the forefront when it comes to conversations about technology and security. With it now becoming a part of our daily lives, how can organizations implement the concepts outlined in the cybersecurity information sheet to ensure that new AI technologies are also secure by design?
Yeah, this is honestly the problem of our time to a degree, right? AI is going to enable us to do really exciting and transformational things, but it's also terrifying, right? Because the way AI works today in most companies is a black box, right? They want to adopt it, they want to get the benefit, they don't want to be left behind, right? It's like not just pretending the internet won't matter, right? Back in the late 1990s, didn't really work out for the people who were on that side of the equation, and so it's ever present. It's going to cause a transition in the way we innovate. But fundamentally, in terms of the AI technologies that are out there, the really, really good ones are not really as testable as deterministic code, right? There's the benefits of AI come from the fact that it can make decisions in ways that won't always work the same way all the time, right? I was in a prior life, I was building weapon systems, and so the service people were very afraid of anything that was going to make a decision for them for exactly this reason. Your fingers on the trigger if you're launching a munition or something in warfare, and the collateral damage is on you as the pilot or the person who makes that decision. AI, being asked as a software engineer or quality engineer to test AI, it's really daunting, right? And so I think there needs to become, we need to level up the way we test. And at CrowdStrike, we've had to build a lot of new things to make AI somewhat testable and slow down the rate of adoption to make sure that AI performs safely, right? And so, and as intended. The issues of, where is my data going and who has access to what. Access controls are not always done and implemented the same way with AI. And so, given that this is such I'll say nascent but rapidly evolving, field, the most imperative thing that happens right now is that the fundamentals are more important than ever, right? What we're seeing is, adoption of AI and the concerns about AI actually, are help people justify a bigger investment in securing their workstations, securing their cloud, and wakes them up to the fact that they weren't doing very much to secure their cloud in the first place. They may not have MFA implemented the way they want it to be, right? They don't have controls over what users have in various applications. And so, at the end of the day, AI is just software. It is very, very complicated software that behaves in untestable ways. But if you're not testing, you're running the same best in class across the software that you're already building, AI isn't even really a problem that should be on your radar. It's just, you're gonna have the same problems from your regular software. So I would say, using AI as a justifying force rather than something you should be, panicking about and losing sleep about. So,
Charlie, would you like to add here?
Yeah, well, we obviously have a lot of thoughts on this topic as well, as both a longstanding AI developer, a user of AI for our own security, and really throughout our organization. I think there's kind of two pieces to this. The first is just making sure we're connecting all of this good momentum we've built with Secure by Design and Secure by Default to the current kind of market explosion of AI, and making sure that we're not forgetting all of this good momentum that we've built. Right now, there is a huge rush to market for companies. There's a lot of venture investment. There's a new startup every single day. People want to get their new AI products on the market quickly. We cannot forget all of these important lessons that we've learned, that we have scars from learning over the years. In our kind of rush to bring the products to market. We've learned a lot and have successes in eliminating classes of threats. We know that using strong phishing resistant authentication can drive down account compromise via phishing to zero or near zero. So when AI developers are bringing their products to market, they've got to offer MFA options for consumers. And so, and those are just kind of the basic lessons that we've learned that are, tested, stood the test of time, and we need to apply them now to block kind of common forms of attack. I think that's really important for shoring up a lot of the issues we're seeing today, a lot of the real world cyber threats taking place today. Now, I think as Mike is alluding to, there are unsolved problems in AI. I don't think there's a good solution to prompt injection, for instance, as an entire class of attack. And that's where we, I think, really as a community need to come together and work together to drive kind of new best practices, push the state of the art to develop those kind of mitigations that are going to make this technology more safe and secure. The same way that we now have, FIDO2 compliant authentication that can really stop phishing-based account compromise. We need the equivalent of that for kind of more novel AI attacks that we're starting to see. And I think that's why it's really important for the community to come together. I think there's a lot of good initiatives starting to come together to develop kind of best practices and standards. The governments, in the US and elsewhere are leading a lot of them. We in Google, we've joined the Coalition for Secure AI, which is a group of companies kind of dedicated to coming up with new best practices. And I think there's a lot of urgency there to try to address these kind of more novel risks we're starting to see.
And Lisa, if I may, just one alibi on the AI front, well, obviously we've talked at length here around, how companies are defending with AI or using AI to build more securely. There's also, how they're we're seeing a lot of clients also struggle with or start to figure out, how do I manage or monitor how I consume AI, as an organization, right? How do I even protect or defend some of the LLMs that I'm using within my organization? So it's not just outward facing, it's also inward facing problem as well from a security perspective.
Any other comments about emerging technologies or trends that we see that are going to impact secure by design approaches? No? All right, Mark, we're going to go back to you and talk about critical infrastructure. How can implementation of secure by design help protect our critical infrastructure?
Yeah, I'm glad we touched on critical infrastructure here. Obviously, it's so important. It's no secret that the motive of at least our largest adversaries of our country and our allies is or their motive is basically to compromise and maintain persistence within critical infrastructure. Full stop. And lots of ways that they do that. Obviously there's physical threats, there's insider threats as well, but of course cyber is and digital threats are their biggest avenue right now. Once you get past the layers of just general good cybersecurity hygiene, right? Strong passwords, MFA, everything that you and Bob and others spoke about earlier. The next and maybe perhaps the last line of defense is really security by design when it comes to our critical infrastructure and those that provide services and software to critical infrastructure. As someone that works in incident response day to day, I can tell you that we're just seeing an exponential increase in nation state attacks that are leveraging zero-day vulnerabilities as opposed to kind of the traditional phishing or credential-based attacks, right? So what that means is that security by design right now is more important than ever to national security, especially for protecting critical infrastructure.
So how can companies in critical infrastructure best work with government agencies? Any examples you can give there?
Yeah, I want to be tactical. Of course, again, my standard answer to anyone on that would be like continued collaboration between public and private sector, and that trust factor that I still feel needs work in general on both sides. But to be more tactical, I think kind of proactively establishing some good relationships. That's one thing that companies can really do to work better with government agencies. And I say proactively. Don't wait for the government agencies to, you all do an amazing job. I think a number of agencies do, but when you get down to industry specific government agencies, in terms of critical infrastructure, energy and others, transportation, don't wait for those government agencies to reach out. They're swamped, they're under-resourced, right? So be proactive with them, and not just at the operational level, right? I know probably a lot of people on this call even have great relationships with their counterparts in the government for intel sharing and things like that. But I'm talking about at the C-suite level as well, and it needs to be a priority. Nick touched on it actually at the beginning, but this needs to be a priority at the C-suite level, and they need to show government agencies that they take national security seriously, that they take security by design seriously, and they're ready to do their part to defend our nation and our allies' national security.
Okay, we have one last question for everybody, so we're going to go around the horn on this one. How can companies collaborate with partners throughout their ecosystem to ensure that new technologies are secure by design? So you're working on a program yourselves in your own environment, but then you've got vendors, you've got customers, you've got other companies that you partner with. How do you foster that collaboration and ensure that everybody's on board with secure by design? Mike, I'll start with you.
All right. So I think, my point of view here is really that we're only as strong as our weakest link. You could do everything in your power to build, the wall around your products and applications, but everything's interconnected. Your application is actually using a lot of other people's software in it, and and your company is using a lot of other softwares in it. There's nobody that has full control, and so I think it really just starts with transparency and the sharing of best practices. It's essential to create like a tried and true, or like an open dialogue with your customers and partners about what you're doing and what you expect them to do. But I think I alluded to this before. Procurement teams have a lot of power, so I would recommend asking your vendors about all the topics in the Secure Divine pledge, even if you don't ask for the pledge itself during the RFP process, just like you would any other compliance requirement. And read their responses and decide for yourself if that's good enough for your operations and mission. And if you are a software vendor, expect that that's going to happen to you. Expect that you're going to be on the other side of that, and you're going to have to answer those types of questions. The more people that adopt this, which is clearly the right thing to do, ultimately it'll be in the RFPs for your solution as well. So I think it takes a village, but like I think those are ways to make rubber meet road faster. So,
Charlie, what do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree. And, just frankly, I think a great test of whether your company is committed to some of these principles is, are you willing to walk away from a vendor that has shown repeated security failures? Now, every vendor is going to have vulnerabilities, throughout the course of, a product's lifespan, a company's lifespan. But, if you see a vendor that has chronic security challenges and you don't like the answers they're giving you, are you willing to walk away? Because I do think procurement officials have a lot of weight to throw around here. And in terms of how to work with a company, with a potential vendor, in terms of verifying their own commitment, I mean, I agree with Mike about asking some of the questions in the pledge. We're also members of an organization and kind of an emerging standard called Minimum Viable Secure Products, which is basically like a baseline set of application security controls that we and everyone else who's joined that standard require all of our vendors to meet. And we won't even let them, walk through the door if they don't meet those baseline controls. So I would recommend that to folks who are kind of looking for ways to start on this path as well.
I see more and more companies do that. I was at I gave a presentation to a hardware company last week that was in the process of doing that, contractually obligating their vendors to some security standard. Mark, how about you?
Yeah, we see a lot of clients obviously taking their third-party risk management standards to another level, especially around cybersecurity. And I think that just a thumbnail, I guess, soundbite that I would leave is to make sure that you're taking it to the next level, that third-party risk management, and not just taking the off-the-shelf, assessment that you can buy, the surface level information that's available open source about, how good or not good that vendor is when it comes to cybersecurity, because a lot of it's commoditized and packaged, for consumption. But ask the hard questions, like actually peel back the layers from the little numerical score that you buy or that comes back from, from whatever systems that you're using for that vendor risk management, and actually ask some of the hard questions about their security program.
Joanna, I'm going to ask this question of you, but with a little bit different spin. So working with multiple partners and being so connected in your vendor environment, there's also plenty of room in there for human error. So how can companies implement secure by design principles to account for human error when they're collaborating and so connected to their partners?
Yeah, I mean, so like many companies have the partners, have the vendors require them to, participate in whatever training and testing that you're offering your employees. Listen, nobody should be left out of this, right? From, the boardroom down. And so everybody needs to be on kind of the same stage when it comes to their preparation. And so lots of companies are saying, come in the door, show us what you're currently doing, show us how you've been educated. And if it doesn't meet our standards, then, you're required to take what we offer our associates. It's easy as that.
I've implemented that myself. I'm a big fan of that approach. And even extended that to customers of customers and things like that. It's one of the easiest things that you can do, is educate people. It's one of the least expensive and most effective things you can do. Okay, we actually have time for some questions, but while I'm waiting for people to put questions in the chat, I wanted to see if any of our panelists had anything that they wanted to add today that they was on the tip of their tongue and they didn't quite get to. While I'm looking at the questions here.
But while you're doing that, I'll just mention, we touched a little bit on the human factor, right? And Joanna handled most of that for us. When we're talking national security, security by design, insider threat, we are all the insider threat, right? Most of it are non-malicious type of insiders who, click on something they shouldn't, but there is the 1 in X chance of a malicious insider. And so I feel like companies who are playing this role in developing software, especially software that is used in critical infrastructure, have an obligation to have pretty robust insider threat programs, and I'm talking malicious insider threat programs, and that takes a lot of effort. And privacy concerns are part of that as well, but I think they're obligated to have robust insider threat programs. So just wanted to touch on that as well.
Charlie, we've got a question here that I think is well suited for you. Passwordless login is becoming more prevalent as time goes on. How long do you think it will be before it's common practice, or do you believe a different innovation will take hold first? If it's the latter, are there any lesser known technologies that you believe are a better concept? So I know Google's been on a journey here, so talk to us a little bit about, none of us like passwords and they've been a failure. So.
Absolutely. Well, the critical technology for us there is something called passkeys, which is an emerging technical standard that is adopted already by many of the largest kind of tech platforms. So think, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and it essentially allows, through using the device you're logging in from, to provide kind of hardware-backed cryptographic proof that can aid with authentication. It's a long way of saying it is a more secure method of logging into an online account than just a password alone. And adoption is taking place. I think if you are signing up for a Gmail account today, you're going to be opted into using that form of authentication, that passwordless authentication by default. And many very popular online services like an Amazon.com will support passwordless as well. I think there is a much longer kind of tail of online services of all variety that need to kind of proactively opt into that and offer it to their users. And then there's also kind of interoperability challenges, making sure that if you migrate from your laptop to your mobile device, or from your old laptop to your new laptop, that everything is really portable and works seamlessly no matter where you're logging in from. I think there's existing challenges that the community's working on, but they are actively working on it. And I do think that the kind of end is in sight for it, where we can kind of reach this passwordless future. So I'm pretty optimistic about it.
Any other comments about passwords? Zero trust being passwordless? Okay. We have a question from Jazz. While it's great that more vendors offer single sign-on, there's often a tax, in quotes, that deters small businesses from adding it to their security posture. And he names 2 vendors that require big jumps in subscription pricing to enable SSO. Why have something so basic be so financially inaccessible?
I'll take that one. I mean, I think there's 2 sides to this. One is you get what you pay for, right? A lot of those applications are free, and security does cost money, right? Like you do have to, it does cost things. But I think this is a great example of if we all vote with our dollars, and you have a choice in vendors, find the vendor who doesn't charge more for that security or that extra piece, right? So I think, from my perspective, we do have a choice, and if that becomes something that differentiates a company, that they're not charging for it, I think people will flock to it. So
I also think this is just an important conversation to have about what security features should be considered almost inherent to the product itself, that should not be a kind of a separate charge. versus things that do and can and should be charged for. And I don't think, I think together the community, academics, industry, government could probably work together to better define what those things are. There's been an important conversation about whether logs should be free. So, a customer is able to investigate, malicious activity on their platform, and certainly things like MFA and SSO, whether that should come free. And personally, I think we do offer MFA and things like that for free on our platform, but other things we do charge for. And it's hard to know what that line should be, because these things do cost. And if you do start mandating some of these security features as being in the kind of like the base package, consumers may not like the price increase that's going to cause.
Somebody asked, how can we challenge our software vendors to follow the secure by design, secure by default principles? I think we talked a little bit about that, about third-party risk process and just demanding it. What do you guys think? Any other, it's really influence, right? And
Yeah.
I mean, I think everyone should be earning your business all the time, right? And so I think that's really what the third-party risk process is about, is just making sure you're reviewing your relationships on a regular basis to understand if it's still working for you, right? And the world changes. Your contract from a decade ago probably doesn't cover the issues you need to cover today, right? And so making sure, not to say be more transactional, but like if you're not reviewing your existing relationships and your contracts with customers, you're not getting information, not participating in your security. Like, I think you just have to decide if that's worth a vendor worth keeping and worth sticking with, and what are the alternatives, right? And so if you're not evaluating alternatives on a regular basis, that you get to kind of the complacency by default, right? And so I think on net new purchasing, of course, everybody has all the good ideas, but I think it's all the things you already have that you may want to understand and challenge to see if it's worth your dollars.
so we have a really tactical question here, really very practical. How often should organizations audit their current vendors to ensure they're patching any known vulnerabilities? Any best practices there? Does it depend on the environment? Does it depend on the risk? That'd be my intuitive answer, but what do you guys think?
I think it is risk. It's a risk-based decision for the company, for the organization, but it's certainly an ongoing process. I think to answer the question specifically, it should be ongoing. Now that's not, there's automation involved, but it shouldn't just be an annual thing. Like, okay, we got a spreadsheet back with a bunch of answers around what's been done, or, coding standards that have been met, or upgrades that have occurred. It should be iterative. It should be interactive. The best programs that I've seen.
Okay. We'll do one quick question here. So another one about secure by design. Do you see us getting to a point where there will be common global baselines that will compel all companies to operate within a certain standard of secure by design, and will there be sanctions for non-compliance? Bob is probably itching to come back and answer this one.
I mean, I'm happy to give my answer, which is, any company that is doing business in Europe is already there. Europe passed a law called the Cyber Resilience Act that is going to set baseline kind of cybersecurity requirements for every product on the market in the EU. There's some exceptions to that, but by and large, if you're doing business in Europe, you are going to have to do this. I think that the thing that, the challenge there is, many businesses are global and do business in, multiple countries and multiple continents. And so how do we take, all the great kind of like thought leadership and good thinking that Bob Lord and his team at CISA have done, and make sure that that's kind of interoperable, is kind of harmonized with what's going to come out of the EU as part of this. Because what we don't want are to have a bunch of conflicting requirements. You could A common example is, in terms of data retention, there are requirements related to privacy that say you need to, expunge certain records after a certain amount of time. But then those records can also be used to aid in incident response. And so you may want to log them and keep them. And if those requirements are in tension, that puts companies in a very difficult spot. But in general, I do think governments are taking action to try to set these baselines, and it's something we're closely watching.
Yep, it's coming. Get ready. And as you said, it's here in Europe. All right, I want to thank everybody today for participating. Mike, Joanna, Charlie, and Mark, thank you for being with us. Thank you for joining us on behalf of the National Cybersecurity Alliance. Thank you to all of our speakers today for taking the time to share your expertise and initiatives with us. A recording of this webinar will be available on our website, StaySafeOnline.org, and on YouTube very soon. We'll also email a copy to all attendees. For more information about Cybersecurity Awareness Month and all of the campaigns and events that we have all year long, please visit StaySafeOnline.org or follow us on social media. If you had a question today, we had a lot of chat happening and we didn't answer it, you can contact us at info@StaySafeOnline.org, or I would invite you to follow us on social media or check out the website. Answers to a lot of the questions about MFA and other things that were in the chat can be found right there. Thank you all for joining us today. Appreciate you giving us your time. Have a great afternoon.